Sabastien, thank you so much for taking the time here with us. I'm sure last week was quite busy, hearing the news coming down from the Supreme Court. First of all, tell us a little bit about your story, because that's kind of what makes the story, your story with your son.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me. So my name is Sabastien Cotte, and I have a little boy named Jagger, and Jagger just turned 10, and he has a very rare form of mitochondrial disease called Lees disease, and it's very progressive. It's terminal. There's no cure. Pretty much nothing we can do for it. And with kids with Lees disease, if you get your diagnostic before the age of 2, 95% of those kids pass away before the age of 4. And Jagger diagnostic, we got it when he was 1 year old. So they told us we should be okay with his third birthday, but we would never see his 4th birthday. Obviously, not a news any parents want to hear. So we did everything we could. We looked into everything. And then a very short version of a long story is one day I was watching CNN. I saw weed about Charlotte Figi in Colorado. And I was just like, okay, maybe there's something to this. I did a lot of research, ended up creating a group in Georgia with other parents to try to pass legislation because we live in Atlanta. We were not able to pass legislation in 2014. So in August of 2014, my wife, Annette, Jagger, and I moved to Colorado and became medical refugee for a year. We left everything behind, everything, our house, our doctors, our friends, our family, our support group, everything in Georgia, drove to Colorado because Jagger is not allowed to fly. He's too sick to be on a commercial airplane. And we ended up being in Colorado for 13 months, and we've seen great results with cannabis. We had to go back to Georgia for many reasons. Financially, it was hard to keep places in both, especially since we were only going to be in Colorado for 3 months, and we ended up being there for 13. And then our jobs, we eventually had to go back. And then also the altitude, Jagger never got used to the altitude, so it was very difficult for him. But we saw amazing results. The short version is we went from 10 to 12 seizures a day to 2 to 4 seizures a day. And then Jagger had a horrible pain crisis when we called, where his muscle will cramp so bad in his legs that we couldn't even bend his leg. And he would scream sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes hours. And there's nothing we could do other than giving morphine and oxy and a whole bunch of really bad medication that will affect his breathing, and his breathing is a huge problem. So it was kind of a lose-lose situation. And we started THC when we were in Colorado, and we were able to take him off of those meds. And as of today, he has not been on oxy for over 5 years, and he had, I think, 3 doses of morphine in the last 2 years. So we were able to do a lot of good. And Jagger is still very sick. He's on hospice. He's still, very sick. His disease is still there, but he just turned 10 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And we never thought we'll see that. So definitely cannabis has a huge part of the reason why Jagger is still alive today.
Now, you do a lot of traveling to share this story.
I do. I've been all over the world pretty much. Spoke in Paris, spoke in Jamaica, spoke in Mexico, spoke in probably 20 different states in the US. And then a lot of it in Georgia, doing a lot of lobbying, also in DC. Just trying to share the story because I strongly believe, and I always tell this to people, that sharing your story, it's what's going to make things move forward. Until people can relate to you, until legislators can relate to you, nothing's going to happen. At the end of the day, we have to realize that those people get in office, and as soon as they get in office, they start just acting and fundraising and acting and campaigning to be reelected, and they really don't do anything. A stereotype, some of them do, but most of them don't.
No, I think you've accurately summed it up, but go ahead. So
yeah. So most of them, they just want to, especially in the House when it's a 2-year terms, right? Senate with 6 years is a little bit different, but in the House, when they're there for 2 years, the second they're in power, they start their re-election campaign. And so a lot of things fall to the cracks. So when you can actually relate the story, and I always say, and this is kind of a little bit of advice when I've been lobbying for a while, it doesn't matter if you meet with a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, doesn't matter whom you're meeting with. Always share my story. And the very last thing I always tell them is, now imagine if I was your child or your grandchild. And that changed so many minds. So I always tell people, if you're going to lobby, that's a key of being a successful lobbyist. I don't say lobbyist, I want to say advocate. A successful advocate is make them relate to your situation, because the second they believe that could happen to them, then they start caring about it. So that's kind of, something I've been doing around, and that's why I share my story, because the more we can share the stories, and Jagger's story is not unique. There are thousands and thousands of stories like him of successful, treatment with cannabis, of life expectancy being longer with cannabis, and we have to share those stories, and we have to make it personal and relatable.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about this Supreme Court case, this federal case that you guys filed. When did it start? What did that process look like? It went quite a while.
Yes, it did. It did. So I was approached by a couple of lawyers from a healer PC in New York in 2017. And they say they heard Jagger's story, and they wanted to know if we wanted to be one of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit where we were going to sue the federal government over the classification of cannabis, saying that it was unconstitutional for cannabis to be a Schedule I substance. So they explained to me the lawsuit. They told me who else was going to be in the lawsuit. And then they did say, we are putting a target, you are going to put a target on your back, so you should also retain counsel in case something goes wrong. But it was still a very easy decision to do it. I believe it was an important lawsuit. So in 2017, early 2017, I agree. We filed this towards the end of 2017, and we filed it with the second federal Southern District of New York, which is in Manhattan. In 2018, I believe February 14, actually, Valentine's Day, we had a day in court. We went to Manhattan, and we were able to have a day in federal court. We put our cases, and there's 5 plaintiffs. So Jagger, my son, there's Alexis Bortel, which is a little girl from Texas, kind of like Jagger, that moved to Colorado and became a medical refugee. There's Jose Belen, which is an Afghanistan vet, combat vet, that has horrible PTSD. There's Marvin Washington, which is a Super Bowl champion with the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. And then the Cannabis Culture Club, which is a minority-based club out of New York City. And the 5 of us were plaintiffs suing the government on this lawsuit for many things, but the main thing was the classification of cannabis, and we wanted to be descheduled, not rescheduled, but descheduled. So we had a day in court in early 2018 in Manhattan, and it went really well. Unfortunately, we ended up losing, and the judge came back, but in the loss and in the judge notes, something very important happened. The judge say, I cannot grant you guys what you want because there is a process. And the process is to go to the DEA and to ask for descheduling. But however, that being said, the judge says something very important, and he say, looking at Alexis, Jagger, and Jose, it's impossible to say that cannabis does not have medical properties. So we did get a federal judge on the record saying that cannabis has medical property. So we believe that was a huge step. However, we didn't win. So we appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeal, also in New York, and we went there in December, I think, of 2018. And pretty much our argument at the time was, we understand the lower court ruling that there is a process. However, look at the DEA and look at the process with the DEA. It takes 7 to 9 years for them to look at it, and they're going to deny it anyway, because they've been denying every single one of them. So we say, Alexis and Jagger do not have 7 to 9 years to live. Jagger is on hospice. I mean, as much as I hate to say, my kid's not going to be alive for 9 more years. So that was our argument, and we say, so we understand the process, but unless the DEA fast up the process and decide to look at it in a fair way, because they haven't done that, then it's not going to work. So that was an argument. The judge came back, and it was a panel of 3 judges. They came back and they say, okay, we understand exactly what you're saying. However, there is a process. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to make a petition to the DEA. But we also going to put the DEA on notice and tell the DEA, you do not have 7 to 9 years to do it. You have to do this in a very fast manner. Now, they did not specify how fast it was supposed to be. Some people say, they pretty much told the DEA, you get 6 months to do it. We don't know that for sure. We just told them they have to hurry up. That's all they told them. Here's the problem. The DEA came back and say, okay, we'll do that. But the best we're going to do is to put in Schedule 2. We, as plaintiffs, decided that was not worth it. We decided that actually Schedule 2 could be hurting some people because we don't know, there's a lot of people just doing a lot of hypotheses out there. We don't know what will happen with Schedule 2 for sure, but we know that there's a high possibility it could hurt some state program, because now it would go into probably the end of the big pharma, having to go to pharmacies, to license pharmacies, the DA being involved. So we told them, we don't want Schedule 2. we want descheduling. We don't even want 3, 4, and 5. We just want it out of schedule. It shouldn't be there. It's not addictive. It has medical property. We have a federal judge on record saying he has medical property, which is half the argument of scheduling, And so they say, no, the best you're going to get is Schedule 2. So as plaintiff, like I said, we decided and we're not going to do that. So we decided we're not going to file with the DEA. We asked the Second Circuit Court of Appeal to deny our case so we could take it to the Supreme Court, because you cannot go to the Supreme Court unless you get a deny from the lower court. So they finally did it. They deny it, and we filed to the Supreme Court. And we knew it was a very long shot with the Supreme Court. They take about 1% of the cases that get presented in front of them. But we had a high hope. And the way it works with the Supreme Court is that you only need 4 judges to agree to hear the case. Doesn't mean they go to the rule in your favor. Just means that you get a hearing in front of the court. And fortunately for us, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away 3 weeks before we were supposed to get a hearing. And she was also the one that was carrying our petition, because she was carrying every petition coming with the Second Circuit, New York. So she was the one that was going to be presenting her petition to the other judges and making the case for it. And since she unfortunately passed away, that did not happen. So the second she passed away, we knew it was going to be even harder to find 4 judges to agree. We don't know how many agree, how many didn't agree. They don't give us those details. They just say that our petition was denied and we didn't get a hearing. So pretty much the end of the road for the federal lawsuit. So that's as short as I could make it version.
Well, and I can only imagine how you all felt when you heard the news that that Supreme Court justice passed away, and how much that we needed that, but Father of the Year right here, seriously. like what an incredible story, and your advocacy is so important because we have to keep pushing. That's what's so important. So with everything, what is the biggest lesson that you walked away with from this experience?
Well, a couple lessons. One of them is that it takes forever to get anything to the court system. I mean, forever. And tie up a little bit of what Rick was saying earlier, that also shows that if you are in jail right now for cannabis, it's also going to take forever to go to the court system. So while I complain it took forever, I'm still a free man. So, I can only think about the people actually sitting in jail right now that have to go to all those appeal and wait for the court. And it was stressful for us. It took forever. But like I say, at least I was able to wait in regular condition in my house with my family. So that was one thing, that nothing goes fast in the court, in the judicial system in the US. The second thing is we have to look at the positive of this. So again, a federal judge on record saying cannabis as medical property is huge. And the second thing is, I do believe this made the needle move a little bit. If you look at Brown versus Board of Education, which is a case that took segregation out of public school in the US, that was the 8th case about segregation. So it takes a little bit, and every single case, Brown versus Board of Education built up on every case before it that was denied, because they were able to quote that case, they were able to learn, to be inspired by that case. So I'm really hoping somebody else out there is already filing a lawsuit or looking at a lawsuit, and somebody else, it might not be, it's obviously not going to be ours that is going to change everything, but that doesn't matter. I strongly believe, and it's not if anymore, but it's when things are going to be moving. And we don't know when it's going to be. Everybody can have, their ideas, but we don't know for sure. Nobody knows. But lawsuits like ours, I truly believe, make us closer to the when. And so, at least for that, we got to keep, positive, and that's a silver lining of the entire thing.
Absolutely. So, what is next with your advocacy then?
Well, I'm going to focus a little bit of time in Georgia now. We have licenses coming out where we hope we pass a bid in 2019, and we still have not put the applications for the licenses out. So we've been pushing them a lot. So that should be coming anytime. So I'm going to focus on that. And then I'm going to continue doing education. I do a lot of free education for parents. It's been harder for me to go around and do my cannabis 101 class with COVID. So we might move it to an online format. I don't know. I'm a very big in-person guy. I love, I think it's very different and people tend to react and respond more when it's in person, and then they can stay after and ask you a question they don't want to ask in front of everybody else. So, I truly believe, and I miss all those conferences and I miss all those education. So I hope in 2021 we can get back on the road, we can start educating people again, and I really hope Georgia is going to get the act together. Our licenses are going to be awarded, and hopefully in 12 to 14, maybe 16 months, we actually will have dispensaries with product in the state of Georgia, in the deep red South, which would be pretty cool. So that's kind of my goal and my next things I'm going to work on.